Happy 4th of July, guys. Welcome to training 2 of knowing your no. So I'm going to adjust the camera here, so you get a little more of my head, a little less of everything else, right? With yesterday's Facebook/Instagram fun, the Facebook Live system was not working well. So we're just going to do it today. So on Tuesday, we talked about knowing our no part 1. This is where we were starting to practice this concept of occupying our space, occupying our personal authority, staying in our yard, starting to identify with what we feel, and then giving ourselves permission to feel what we feel, in addition to giving ourselves permission not to care. This sets us up for this training, okay? So training 2 is all about hearing the voice, what I call the voice of desire or a want impulse. This is an in-body signal, a signal or a sensation we feel in our body that attracts or repels us to things. This is our yes and no impulse. And this is where we start to hear our genuine desire for what we want and what we don't, okay? It's a very important component to building boundaries and an essential ingredient to our happiness. Because if we're not able to listen to ourselves and know what we want and don't want, then how can we choose it, right? So with codependency and narcissistic abuse, we were conditioned through the fawn response, because we're dealing with that trauma discard threat, right? We're conditioned to ignore ourselves. We become numb to ourselves. We tune ourselves out. And instead, we tune into them and we amplify them. We amplify our assumptions about what they want, what they don't want. We shape shift into whatever we think will please them, all in order to try to get some of that love, some of that connection from them. Now remember, in this dynamic, you're dealing with the consumer-supply relationship. You're the supply, they're the consumer. Whatever bone they throw you, whatever breadcrumb of love they throw at you, it's not going to fulfill you. It's going to hook you. This is technically called intermittent reinforcement. This is what gets us really deeply hooked on them. It keeps us coming back to them over and over and over, okay? This is where trauma bonding or love addiction is created. Now, we have lost contact with our no and with our yes because of that. And we've been given an antagonistic relationship with no and yes with inside ourselves. This is where we get into these internal conflicts that produce guilt and shame for saying yes or no to things we want, because we were taught that we were selfish for wanting something that somebody else didn't. Okay? I'm going to say that again. We were taught that we were selfish for wanting something that somebody else didn't want. That's what people say is selfishness. In reality, selfishness is demanding somebody else give you something you have no right or an entitlement to, which is 99.9% of everything that somebody else has. I only put 0.01% in there because if you're a parent, the child, especially a young child, infant, toddler, to the ages of 12, 14, rely on you for their survival. They have an entitlement to food, water, love, protection, things like that. And the reason why they have an entitlement for that is they didn't consent to coming into the world. You created them, you brought them into the world, so now you have a commitment to them, an obligation to them to take care of them, so they have an entitlement to that until they're around age 16 where they can start taking care of themselves, building their own lives, okay? So selfishness is demanding something from someone else that you have no right or entitlement to, which is pretty much everything, especially if you're in an adult relationship. But because we were taught that selfishness is choosing something we want that somebody else doesn't, we internalize this guilt, this shame about having a difference, okay? The big friction here in being self, being who we are, is difference, because that means we're going through a process called individuation. So in codependency, we absorb the other person. We become the same as they are. We mimic them. But in healthy maturity, becoming who we are, we go through this process called differentiation or individuation, where we have differences from somebody else's expectations, desires, or wants. Okay? When we understand this, then we can see that yes and no are how we differentiate. That's where our power is. But we were conditioned by the response of other people to our yeses and nos to feel shame and guilt because they felt it was selfish. They called us too much, right? That sound familiar? You're too much. You're too sensitive. You're too demanding. You're too picky. You're selfish. Why do you always make it about you? Why can't you be more flexible? Things like that. And what's ironic in all of this is they're actually the ones that are selfish. They're the ones who are intolerant. They're the ones who are demanding too much. They're the ones who are dismissive and discarding. So it's a very important component to understand here that we've been conditioned to hate our no, to fear saying no. We have been conditioned to have anxiety about saying no to people, and we've been conditioned to just say yes against our own best interests. This is how we survived the threat of the discard, the threat of being thrown away. This is what fawning does. Now, how do we hear our voice again? How do we tune back into who we really are? We need to slow down, return to that practice of occupying space. Then we need to tune into the impulse we feel when something, when an option or opportunity shows up for us. And there's a very simple system to this, guys. This is not complex. We don't need to analyze everything or most things, because analysis isn't going to lead to happiness. It's just going to lead to more analysis. Okay. So if you're if you're like an analyzer, that's your thing, hit the like button. Let me know, because I'm a big analyzer, and it has its place. It has its purpose. And it's something we're conditioned into by the fawn response, but it's also not useful for happiness, because happiness isn't the result of analysis. It's an emotional experience. It's a fulfillment, okay? And so to know what our yes and our no is, we need to listen to what our body says when an option or opportunity shows up. It's very simple. Is it appealing or is it revolting? Am I attracted to it or am I not? Like, I don't want to do that. Is it meh or is it yes? Is it exciting or is it boring? Is it light and expansive or is it heavy and contractive? And if it's light and expansive, you definitely want to follow that. If it's heavy and contractive, walk away. Lightness points to truth for you. Heaviness points to falsehood for you. Okay? So you can actually find something that's appealing but heavy. That's not where you want to go right now. You want to go towards things that are appealing and light. That's going to get you more and more connected to happiness and more connected to genuine experiences that are relevant to you. Okay? That's a very important component here. Happiness is all about experiences that mean something for you, and not about pleasing other people. In fact, you want to make a leap out of codependency, realize that pleasing is all about controlling someone else's feelings. It's about regulating them. It's not about regulating us. Our job is to regulate us. Our happiness is our first and foremost priority. When we make our happiness the first and foremost priority, we're able to choose ourselves first, and then we're able to choose people, places, and things in the world that align with that happiness, and then we have what's called congruency, and voila, we're living a life we want to live with relationships, people, and experiences that fulfill us. That's that's how we do it. That's the formula. That's pretty much it right there, okay? So when you approach an opportunity or an opportunity approaches you, you find an option, listen to how your body responds. Is it light or is it heavy? Is it attracted or is it repulsed by it? And the easy way to start tuning this in here is to go to the superstore, go to Walmart, go to Fred Meyer, go to Kroger's, wherever you go, or go to the mall and walk around and listen to how your body responds to the things you encounter. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to, buy anything. You don't have to act on it. It's more like, ooh, a donut. Don't really want a donut. Ooh, a chocolate. I want the chocolate. Chocolate cubes. A piece of fruit. Ooh, yeah. A vegetable. You might actually, vegetables are interesting for people. They actually find that they want the vegetable, but they have this conditioning about eating vegetables. They're like, ooh, it's a vegetable. But you're like, It's interesting when we start listening to our body, we start hearing what we want and what we don't. Then we can expand that to the people we interact with. Now, there's one caveat here. For those of you dealing with love addiction, you're like hooked on the narcissistic person. You're hooked on the other person to the point where your brain gives you all these love feelings despite all the abusive treatment they give you. Your brain is not functioning correctly. It is inverted against itself, and that's because of the codependent fantasy. Your brain's actually responding to the illusion you have about that person. That's what creates those love feelings, and denying the reality of that person. But when we accept the reality of it, we break the fantasy, then we can get in contact with the genuine pain there. You'll also notice, if you're listening to your body when encountering this, if you're dealing with trauma bonding or love addiction, your body's going to actually be repulsed by it, but it's also going to be compelled into it. Both of these are heavy forces. Both of those are the signal that you're going in a direction that's not highest and best for you. It's not good for you. That's what gets you stuck there, okay? It's a high, but it's a heavy high. And you're not really going to see that yet until you get some distance from it and you're actually having what's called a light high. Light highs are like, oh, wow, this is so invigorating. This is nourishing. This is comforting. This is calming. It feels really good, really open. That's where real love is. That's where you deserve to be. And that's where you're going to go as you break free of that trauma bond. Now, if you're really struggling with it, the Codependence-to-Confidence system has what's called Love Addiction to Connection, which is my 12-week system that helps, a 12-week training that decouples you from the narcissist, heals the love addiction, which is really about internalized loneliness and denial. It helps you withdraw from the chemical cocktail going on in your brain, and then restore connection back to yourself and back to others. So if you want to make that happen quick, that's what you want to join. Now, you can click the button above, take the workshop. That's the only chance you have. That's the only way you have of getting into the system right now until I open the doors again, which I do once a month, and it'll be later this month in which that happens. So, okay, guys, this is how we start to hear the voice of no, or our want impulse. We tune into our bodies. We see what's light. We see what's heavy. We see what's attractive, what's repulsive, and we be honest with ourselves. We give ourselves a chance to go, ooh, let's follow that, because there's brilliance in that. This is where we start to really tap back into what brings happiness into our lives naturally and organically, and empowers us to build a deeper sense of love and honor and holding with ourselves, okay? So that's today's training, guys. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you being a part of our community. If you're here on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you got out of this training. It helps me understand if I'm hitting the button or not for you guys. I really appreciate your love, your support. I love you. I care about you. And remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And one last note, next week, I open the doors for Get Closure Now, which is my exclusive system and training, how to regulate your nervous system back to calm, get closure on trauma, and discover who you are afterwards. Okay? More about that starting next Tuesday. You guys have a good day. Enjoy the holiday, and I will see you tomorrow for our next training, how we deal with the guilt and how we structure ourselves in dealing with disappointing other people. You guys have a great day and have a good night.